Spectre Vision Radio.
While our government's official position is not to speculate on this subject, we can choose to let our minds explore other possibilities, to use our imaginations. For if we consider that astroscientists agree on one point, that the possibility of life elsewhere is not only quite probable, some feel it is there without a doubt. Let us suppose then that these objects are real space vehicles, extraterrestrial in origin, and not an illusion of the mind.
I'm Ryan Sprague, and you are now somewhere in the skies. Hey, what's going on, guys? Ryan here, and welcome to Somewhere in the Skies. I recently had the opportunity to be a guest speaker at the first ever Cosmic Frequencies event in the town of Hexham in Northumberland, England. It was a weekend full of live music, salon discussions, movie screenings, and a special lecture series. In this lecture series, our first speaker was Dan Pye, an astronomer from the Kielder Observatory, who spoke on the science of the cosmos and the possibilities of extraterrestrial life. I then gave a talk which focused on the human side of UFO events and how the aftermath of a sighting or encounter can fundamentally change a person in many different ways. Then we Horizon and his work on the Netflix series Three-Body Problem. The day's talks culminated into a very thought-provoking Q&A discussion with Dan, Steve, myself, and our live audience. It was moderated by Cosmic Frequencies founders and hosts, Nicole Skelties and Bill Garrett. So today, you're going to hear each of our presentations and the fascinating Q&A that we had after. Just a warning, the audio isn't perfect, but you'll get used to it as time goes on. And if visuals are referenced in the talks, I would strongly suggest checking out our Spotify video version or our YouTube version of this episode for the full effect. My special thanks goes out to Nicole and Bill and the incredible team behind Cosmic Frequencies, and to all the locals and those who traveled into Hexham to come to the event. It was an incredible honor to take part, and I can't wait to return next year. To learn more about Cosmic Frequencies, be sure to visit cosmicfrequencies.org. And be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and rate us on Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button and subscribe as well. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy this exclusive experience from Cosmic Frequencies, live from Hexham, England.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you very much indeed for coming to Cosmic Frequencies 2025 here in Hexham. That was the music of SKX Funkanauts. We will have more of them later in the show. My name is Bill Garrett. I'm your Master of Ceremonies, pusher of buttons, general producer of the show with my two fine colleagues Mike Evans and Nicole Skelties. So it's kind of being run on a budget, so we hope we're doing quite well. Again, thank you very much indeed in trusting us and coming to the show. We have a stellar cast of people to talk about this subject area of the existential question, are we alone in the universe, and have they come and visited us? So, we hope you will be enlightened. There are no solid answers to these questions. All we can do is provide you with some information and a very wide-ranging perspectives on this subject area.
There we go. So I think this is a really good place to start, actually, by looking at the scale of the universe and just looking at the sheer size of everything that we're contained within. And I can make this talk really, really short, actually, just by saying something such as space is just big. And that will be it. More, I'll give you more. give me 1 second space, is this. And that's it. No, I'm joking. I think a really good place to start whenever we're talking about the scale of the universe is probably just by looking at our local environment to the universe. And a good place to start with that is with our sun. Our sun, this image was taken by, well, it wasn't taken, it was drawn by Galileo back in the 1600s. And I love it because you can see some features, and this was really the first time that anybody had confidently suggested to the entire world that the sun was a physical entity, spherical, with features. He was really pioneering the idea that the sun was a central piece of our universe at the time. We were on this vessel going around this object. The first time that it was starting to be accepted by the masses, and arguably you could say this is when astronomy first became a subject. Prior to this, everything was a little bit more philosophical, a little bit more spiritual in some cases, and we can go down the route of talking about astrology, but we're not going to do that right now. Instead, I want to talk about just the sheer size of our sun to begin with. It's absolutely ginormous. It's about 109 times the width of our planet, just under 1 million miles wide. And you could fit inside of our sun, inside of its volume, about 1.3 million of our little planet Earth. And you can see just against the rest of the planets in the solar system just how big this object is. In fact, if you got all of those planets there and all of the other stuff that you could see in the solar system, all of the mass of our solar system, and you made it into a big pile, the sun would still be 99.86% of your pile of stuff. The sun is overwhelmingly the most massive object in our solar system. And it all started life inside of a ginormous gas cloud. It's very different to the planets. The planets are going around our sun, and the big distinguishing difference is that this thing came first as a result of a big stellar nursery, such as what we're seeing here. This here is the Eagle Nebula, arguably one of the most famous nebulas taken in the mid-90s by the Hubble Space Telescope, these beautiful pillars of creation, as they often get called as well. And inside of a big cloud or a cloud complex such as this is where stars start to form. And the reason why stars start to form is often because of gravity. So really, just talk about gravity for a second, because I think gravity, we often get taught about gravity as if it was a kind of mythical, magical thing that happens that keeps us on the ground. Apples fall out of trees because of gravity, but actually what gravity is it's more of a distortion of space when you put something in it. So if you imagine the vacuum of space with nothing in it, a line would just go straight through it until you come along and you put some mass in that universe, and then what would happen is that line would start to bend around that object. It distorts space, thus introducing mass into it. So now if you imagine, if you're a little hydrogen atom, your little hydrogen atom has mass, and the area around it is being distorted. So if something comes too close to that, it's going to fall into it. Just like we're currently falling into our planet, because our planet is distorting space, so we're falling into our planet right now. Now if you've got another hydrogen atom that should come along, well, the two of them, if they get too close, those little wells that are now being created overlap and they'll fall towards each other. Well, they don't want to stick to each other. The hydrogen atoms, they hate each other. They're a little bit like, it's like trying to get pandas to mate. It's not going to happen. They hate each other. You've got to really force them together. And so what happens here is you get maybe two hydrogen atoms that are really close, and then another one drifts by at the right moment that it gets dragged in, and then another one gets dragged in, and then more and more and more. The more and more hydrogen atoms are getting amassed in this little area, the more and more the well is starting to increase, more and more starting to get pulled into this mess, until it reaches a point whereby there's so much stuff now trying to stick together, fall into each other, that the pressure right in the very centre is incredible enough to be able to force these hydrogen atoms together. And this is hydrogen fusion. And this is what brings suns like our sun to life and continues to fuel our sun is hydrogen fusion at a phenomenal rate, in fact. So this process happens in phenomenal quantities every second. About 400 million tonnes of hydrogen is turned to about 396 million tonnes of helium every single second in our sun, which is a strange number because we're putting in some hydrogen and getting out helium, but we're getting less helium out when we do that. And as a result of that, 4 million tonnes of mass has disappeared in that little equation we did there. So where's that gone? Well, that becomes energy. And it's the energy that we can see, the light that we can see. And our sun will go on to create more elements in the periodic table, and that's kind of the job of a sun, is to produce elements in the periodic table. But not to dwell too much on the physics of all of this right now. I want to go back to talking about scale. We'll just give you an example of what's going on in our locality and what these things are that we're going to be talking about here. So that's our sun. Okay, there's a lovely picture of it. And you get to see these incredible features. I love this video, these incredible bands of light coming out of our sun. It's an incredible beating heart of our solar system. But the problem is with space is that everything is just so unbelievably far away. Our sun's 93 million miles away from us. The moon is 250,000 miles away from us. And even when you put it on the screen here, look to scale, that's a really long way. And we sent people there back in the 60s and the 70s, all that way to the moon. People always say to us, Dan, why have we not gone back to the moon since the 70s? It's because it's really far. How much is fuel? It's really expensive to get these things to the moon, and there's so much going on this rock. But then when we start to expand away from our sun into the rest of the universe, the numbers become really, really uncomfortable. And so I've armed each of you, or hopefully armed many of you, with a bouncy ball. And this is when your bouncy ball comes in useful. Please don't throw it at me. You can later if you want to. Well, your bouncy ball is 24 millimeters in diameter. This is your little personal sun. And I want you just to keep a hold of your little personal sun for a second. All of these stars that we see on the screen right now, this incredible structure here that we see in the middle of the Milky Way galaxy that we live inside of, all of those stars, they're suns, just like our sun, just really, really far away. And we did actually get taught this in the 90s, actually, by Forum Cinema. Things in the distance, they just seem smaller, right? They're just really, 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 really far away. So how far away are these objects? Well, your little sun's 24 millimeters. On that scale, if we shrank the sun down to the size of your little 24 millimeter sun that you've got there, on that scale, the Earth would be about 2.6 meters away from the sun on that scale. Whereas if we moved a little bit further away from the Earth and went to somewhere such as Pluto, well, for Pluto, we'd have to go a little bit further than this room. In fact, we'd have to go all the way over to Tesco, about 106 meters away on that scale. Well, what about the nearest star? The nearest star is 4.24 light years away. Light years, 1 light year is a unit of measurement of 6 trillion miles. 4.24 of those on that scale would push you way beyond the boundaries of the UK, across to somewhere in the region of Luxembourg. That's where our nearest star would be on that scale, with the sun just being 24 millimeters wide. Well, what about even further away than that? Well, I had to change the animation actually when I got to this scale. I had to switch to a different piece of software. If we were to move outside of our galaxy and go to somewhere such as the Andromeda Galaxy, our nearest neighbouring galaxy, that would be way beyond the confines of Earth, way, way out there, somewhere in the asteroid belt on that scale. And the galaxy itself would be about 1,200 times the size of the sun. So imagine your little sun there, times it by 1,200, that would give you an approximate size of things. Okay, so things are really, really big out there. And around each of these suns is planets. Something that was theorised back in the 1500s, in fact, by this chap here. His name is Giordano Bruno. He was quite a trailblazer of the time. who believed in some incredible things. Bear in mind, this was before we got comfortable with the sun being the centre of the universe at the time. This chap was saying all of the stars in the night sky, they're suns with planets going around them, just like Earth goes around the sun. You can imagine how popular he was in the 1500s for this. He travelled across Europe, kicked out of practically every country that he visited, until he eventually went back to Italy. God knows why, but he was coaxed back somehow. And then in the year 1600, he was dragged out into Campo de Fiori in Rome, tied upside down to a pole and set fire to, just because he thought that there was other planets going around other suns. Can you imagine that kind of persecution? Anyway, turns out he was right, wasn't he? We didn't find that out until 1992 though, and now we found about 6,000 of these things orbiting around other star systems. So now the kind of structure of the universe, if you like, is you've got suns with planets going around them. Is there bigger structures? Yes, there is, and it was a local astronomer who really started to pioneer this, and you've kind of had a glimpse of this bit already, but this here is Thomas Wright. He was from Bishop Auckland in County Durham, and Thomas Wright said, when I look up in the night sky, can you imagine what the night sky would have been like back in the 1700s, which is when he suggested this? It would have been amazing. Everybody would have had a dark sky in their backyard. And he said, I think this band of light that I can see in the sky, I think this is actually an island of stars that we live inside of, one filled with billions and billions of stars. And he termed it an island universe, which went on to influence the works of Immanuel Kant. And then he suggested that I think there's other island universes out there as well. And it turns out he was absolutely right. If you look around our planet, you can see the structure that surrounds us, this band of light. We're inside of the Milky Way galaxy, or as he termed it, his island universe. This flat disc-like plane of stars filled with about 400 billion stars, and our sun is just one of those. And this entire structure is about 100,000 light years in diameter. So again, 100,000 times 6 trillion, that's your distance in miles there. This thing is absolutely ginormous. So what about that other place as well, other island universes? Well, they do exist, but we didn't get to know that they existed until about 100 years ago, when somebody, quite famous chap by the name of Edwin Hubble, he's got a telescope named after him if you're not familiar, found that this thing is outside of our own little island universe, the Andromeda Galaxy, and it took an image of the Andromeda Galaxy, which I think is amazing. And when we start to zoom into this image, it was such a high resolution image, you can see all of these little tiny dots that are on the screen right now. Each one of those is a star inside of this galaxy over here, a galaxy filled with about maybe 500 billion stars in it. This thing is absolutely ginormous, and that's just one of, well, many galaxies out there. And it's in this image right here. The lighting in this room doesn't do it any justice, but it really jumps off the screen when you put a circle around it like that. So there it is. Quite hard to spot. You can't see it with the naked eye. It's an incredible structure, but just one of trillions and trillions and trillions of galaxies which occupy our universe. Almost a countless number. We don't know where it ends. We have only the evidence as far back as we can physically see, and beyond that, well, we can't see anything. But one thing that we can see is that structure starts to develop an incredible web-like shape where things are clustered together on what starts to look a little bit like the neural pathways of a brain, and I think that's really quite intriguing. And that's it. Thanks, guys.
We have one very quick question for you now. Your context of your presentation is very much about the enormity of the universe and our very small place in it. We have started to, as a scientific exploration pitch, understood that there are exoplanets. I think the closest is about 4.6 million light years away. Is that correct? What, in your view, as a professional astronomer, are we in a position to understand that we are alone or we are unique?
It's a really hard question because, everybody argues with each other. The beauty of science is, to the professional scientific realm, and using the word professional astronomer is a very inaccurate word to use for me. I'm certainly not that. But the scientific realm is well known for its arguments, its debates, and its very contrasting views. There are people who think that there is a likelihood that there could be life somewhere else, which is very similar to us because the numbers statistically make it feasible. And I think that's the only way that you can really comfortably start to work through that, is to look at the numbers and look at the statistic possibility of it. But certainly the way that I find it more comfortable, and I'll give you one statistic on that, which is that when you look at the rest of the universe around us, there's about 100 sextillion stars that we can see. And that number is so big, it's got 22 zeros on the end of it. And the number, to give you some context on that, is about 10 times the amount of grains of sand that we think occupy our little planet here, there or thereabouts. It's very rough maths. And so 10 times the amount of grains of sand on our planet, that's how many stars there are. And then you could say, well, okay, out of all those stars, which ones could be habitable, which ones are like our sun, and you can start to dwindle down those numbers, and then you can say which is in the habitable zone, which actually I don't think is a place that we're going to find life in our solar system, to be honest, next, and I think they will be found. So even the numbers start to lose sense at some point as well.
Do you think the Drake equation, to remind anybody who is not familiar with the Drake equation, this was an equation created in the 1970s by a group of very prominent scientists and astronomers and astrophysicists who sat down and tried to calculate what is the possibility of life within our galaxy. Now that was a very blunt equation. They came up with some really quite deep assumptions. Do you think in the last 50 years, the profession of astrophysicists and scientists and astronomers would now look at that equation and say, okay, we need to rethink it. It's probably, now we see that the uniqueness that has created life on this planet is probably much more complex, and therefore the Drake equation may now need to be rethought. Do you think that's a point?
Yeah, definitely. I think when you've got something that's 50 years old in science, it is absolutely well out of date. I mean, we haven't even discovered exoplanets at that point, arguably. So there's, that should be looked at again. And it probably is looked at again, in fact. I can't think of whether or not it has off the top of my head, but yeah, it should be. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dan.
Cool.
Okay. Next presenter to take the stage, please. Sprague is an author and podcaster. What you're going to say is going to be quite mind-bending. It is for me.
Hi, my name is Ryan Sprague, as Phil mentioned. I host a podcast called Somewhere in the Skies about UFOs. I've been hosting the podcast for almost a decade at this point. I remember when I first started it, I didn't think I'd make it past 5 episodes. We're now up to about 450, and it's been a wild ride from there. I've authored 3 books on the subject of UFOs, 2 of which are currently being taught in universities in the United States. I often go on television shows, Ancient Aliens, Mysteries Decoded, things like this, to try to lend credibility to this often ridiculed topic of UFOs. Before I kind of start my talk, I'd love to know from you guys, how many people here have seen or believe they've seen something in the sky they cannot explain? That's awesome. Okay. All right. That went well. I was a little nervous. So when it comes to what I call my ufology, as it were. I'm not a scientist. I'm very happy that we have the scientists here to show you what is possible out there. And that lends credibility to the work that I do, and that is dealing with people. When I'm not doing UFOs, as I call it, I am a playwright. I spent over a decade in New York City. My plays have been produced all over the world. And when I first became a playwright, the first thing you learn is that your characters in your play, it must be one of the most pivotal moments in their life. Otherwise, why are we watching this? And that often comes with some sort of change in aftermath for this person to be fundamentally changed. And that's what I wanted to do when it came to UFOs. I'm not here to convince anyone that aliens are real. I'm not here to even say that UFOs are directly connected to extraterrestrials. I'm here to show you, like many of you in this room, that everyday people are seeing things they cannot explain in our skies, and it is greatly impacting their lives. So I often look at these individuals almost as a character would, as a playwright would look at a character. This can be a pivotal moment and life-changing experience for many people out there. Now, I have traveled the world interviewing countless people about their UFO experiences, and while I sought to find patterns in this, it was pretty interesting what I did find, and that's that this thing, whatever UFOs are, a million different possibilities for them, it does change people. And that ultimately would become what I talk about in my books. So today I'm going to take a human approach to the UFO phenomenon for you. And that began with me. I actually had a personal UFO sighting in 1995 in central New York in the US with my father. I was not alone. I was fishing off of a dock, and I looked up into the night sky, and this is what I saw. It was 3 perfect equilateral lights in a triangular formation with a red light in the middle. It was massive, it was low, it was completely silent, and I don't know what it was. I yelled for my father to come outside where we were staying at our camp at the time, and he did witness this with me. And we both watched as this craft, I did not see a structured machine, but it was a perfect triangle, and I could not see the stars behind it. Neither could my father. So we did believe this was some sort of structured craft, completely silent. We both knew this was not a conventional aircraft by any stretch. And it just hovered silently over the St. Lawrence River in New York and disappeared on the other side of the river, which is the border between the US and Canada. I don't know what it was. I'll never know what it was, but it dramatically affected my life. I was a baseball player, thought I was going to go pro. Instead, I became a ufologist. To my father's dismay, I think. But that's a story for another time. He's come around since. But yeah, this changed the entire course of my life. It has brought me to this room right now. And ultimately, it also would correlate to hundreds and hundreds of people that I've interviewed throughout the 8 years of my podcast and in my books, Somewhere in the Skies. So this is just a small example of some of the individuals that I've spoken to who had their lives dramatically changed by a UFO encounter. So what I'm going to do is share a few of these with you guys today, and you're going to hear directly from these individuals about how these events seemingly changed their lives. So the first person I'm going to introduce you to is Kieran Woodhouse. Kieran was a warehouse manager for a medical equipment company, and he and his brother Cameron were from Hessdalen in the West Midlands in England. And on April 10th, 2013, he and his brother were leaving a rugby practice that they were at. And on the way home, they saw a small pinpoint of light in the sky, and it was running parallel to their vehicle as they were going down the road. And as they kept driving, this thing would follow them If they slowed down, this point of light would slow down. If they stopped, this point of light would stop. And as they drove on, the object came closer and closer to their vehicle. And what they eventually would see is what you see up here. It was a perfect black triangle, almost identical to what I saw in 1995. What fascinated me most about this case, actually, was not so much the UFO itself, and that's going to be kind of a running pattern here. It's not the UFO I find most intriguing, it's the way that it impacts the individual, the observer of said UFO. That's our buddy Kieran. He would end up telling me about this event when he and his brother saw this black triangle. I should point out that my brother and I were absolutely petrified. We were visibly shaking and both crying. It's something I'm not ashamed to admit, but at the same time, something I can't explain. There was no reason for us to have been crying in this moment, but we were all the same. So this really, as a playwright, a dramatist, caught my attention that looking up at this UFO while scared, I'm sure excited, adrenaline, they both just immediately started crying and becoming emotional looking at this thing. Not the first, I think, reaction that many would have when seeing one of these. So I found that very interesting. So now what I'm going to do, and again, this will be repeated for a few of these other people, you're going to hear straight from Kieran about how this affected him and what he took from this experience and how he integrated it into his life.
So during the actual sighting, my brother and I both started crying. We weren't necessarily scared, but we were dealing with something that we didn't know and at the time didn't really understand. So for us, we're both the type of people that if we can deal with an external threat, then we understand what it is and we can deal with it. But something like this, we didn't know what it was, and the silence of the object was petrifying. That was scary, but that this object could be so close, so big, yet so silent. So we sat there for the few minutes and cried. And eventually, when this thing disappeared, we started the car back up and headed home. And we told our parents. We were both living with our parents at the time. And I think if it was just me, then they maybe wouldn't have believed me as much. But because my brother, who isn't really into this kind of thing and doesn't really research this kind of thing, he backed me up, and I think that added a little bit of credibility to what we were saying. So since then, we haven't really spoken about it, really. Like I say, my brother's not really into that kind of thing. I've continued to research the paranormal and UFOs. So we do talk about that side of things, but not really about our shared experience. I've never said that this thing was aliens, because I don't know. And it could have been military, it could have been anything, but I can't for sure say that it's extraterrestrial. And I guess really, if I had to have an opinion on what these things are, the UFO subjects as a whole, I believe that they're interdimensional beings and they're operating on frequencies outside of our perceptive range. And we can tune into these frequencies by chance, or some people can do it as and when they wish. And when we tune into these frequencies, we see these paranormal entities, be they spirits, UFOs, Bigfoot, and anything like that, really. So yeah, that's it. That's our experience. It's how it made us feel. It's what it's done to me. And I guess really, if anybody has a UFO sighting, they should speak out about it, and they shouldn't feel afraid to talk about it. Although there is a stigma associated with it, and people feel that they're gonna they might lose their career, or they might be mocked for what they've seen. But I think the world is changing now. The news is beginning to talk more about it, and it's becoming more mainstream. So I think there's never been a better opportunity for people to be able to talk about what they've seen and their experiences. And the support is out there, particularly through people like Ryan, who is great with this kind of thing. So if you have seen anything, then do report it.
Now, I dramatically underestimated how long these would each take, guys, so I'm going to skip to one of the more sensational cases for you, give you a little taste of that. And we had a case in Germany here. I am unfortunately going to have to get to this one for you, but all of these cases can be found in my books, which are available at the VIP meeting after this as well. Sorry, I had to do a little plug there. This is Scott Santa. He's a retired Coast Guard and United States Postal Worker. In the summer of 1974 in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, at a drive-in movie theater, he and his buddy were getting ready to watch a movie. The entire parking lot was full of cars. All the lights, these big floodlights were on in the parking lot there. The movie was going to start any minute. And then all of a sudden, all of the lights in this drive-in movie theater went down completely. People tried turning on their headlights on their vehicles, and nobody's cars would start. We are seemingly talking about dozens and dozens of vehicles. And all of a sudden, from out of the forest, which was behind the big movie screen, Scott and allegedly hundreds of other people saw this. They saw this massive chevron/boomerang shaped craft hovering over the drive-in movie theater. This thing floated over the parking lot of the area. Again, nobody's cars would start. All of their engines had seemingly failed at the same time. And once this object went over the parking lot area, it disappeared out of sight. All the lights come back on. People's vehicles start. So you would think at this point, people would feel scared, threatened, maybe start leaving the drive-in movie theater or something. No, not a single person left. Scott got out of his car, went to the restroom area of the drive-in, waited in line with other people, and nobody was talking about what had just been seen over this parking lot. He got back to his vehicle, the movie started, they watched the entire thing, and they went home. But not a single person there talked about what had just happened. So, I don't know what that means. With a lot of these cases I've come across, there is this almost instant amnesia that happens to a UFO witness, where they see something, and then it just is gone, out of their mind. This would lead to some problems for Scott, actually. He would eventually become very isolated in his life. He was the only one who would eventually remember this happening. After seeing a craft like this on the front of a UFO book, he felt triggered and all the memories started coming back to him. But he could not find anyone else in his town who remembered this happening. He couldn't find his friend who had been with him that night and saw this thing either. And he thought he was crazy. He became very depressed, very alienated, forgive the pun. And it took a big toll on him. He didn't think anyone would ever come forward and say, this happened. I looked in the local newspapers, nothing from the time period when this thing happened either. And then my first book came out. And soon after that, I had somebody reach out to me and tell me, I'm going to try to get to the letter here as I close things up. I read your book during a camping trip last month, and I almost dropped it after reading the story about the man at the drive-in theater. I grew up in Summit County, not too far from the drive-in. I remember one night in the summer I was in the backyard smoking a cigarette with my sister, and I swear to you, we looked up and saw exactly an object that looked like what the man in your book described. It was very big, pitch black. My sister freaked out and ran inside, but I watched it until it went out of sight. The only difference from what the man saw was that we could see a few white lights on each end of the thing, pointing down at the ground. The light beams were going in motion like they were searching for something. We thought maybe it was some sort of blimp or a helicopter, but it had no propellers and was silent. I remember it to this day, but when I talked to my sister, she denies it ever happened, which I found interesting. Maybe she didn't remember it happening. But I remember it to this day. Anyway, I thought I'd share this with you because it was so close to where he saw this and where we saw what we did. I know it was the same year because my sister graduated high school that year. Again, she denies we saw it, or she just doesn't remember it, like the man in the book. Either way, if he wants to talk to me about it, you can give him my email. Just wanted to know, I think I saw the same thing. These two are inseparable at this point. They talk constantly, and this response was enough vindication for him. So, if I did anything, I didn't prove aliens existed, but I made this one guy know that he was not alone, possibly searching for something to prove we are not alone. So yeah, I have many other cases, guys, but again, I usually give like an hour lecture, and I put this down to 15 minutes. No, it was rough for me, but I appreciate your time. The last thing I'll put here for you. Oh, that's a good case. It's in the book. These are the words that stuck out to me in my research. All wondering, insignificant, vulnerable, exposed. Mind-blowing, love, grateful, amazed, thankful, burning curiosity, trying to make sense of the world, vindication, and the last one, meaning. I think this topic, more than anything, when you brush up against it, when you possibly have a UFO sighting, or whether you're just curious, it gives you a sense of meaning. I don't know what UFOs are. I don't know what UFOs aren't. The United States has admitted they are real, but there's a million questions that come after that. The UK is not too far behind. Many other countries are now officially investigating UAP or UFOs from a military standpoint. But I do want to show that for every one of those military encounters that you come across on the news, there are hundreds of people just like you, just like me, who are seeing these things, can't explain it, and are fundamentally changed by it. People who saw a UFO and never had any artistic abilities can now play a guitar out of nowhere, can now make the most geometrically sound art, having no art abilities before that. These are just a small example of what I've come across in my research, but again, I think these words are something I'd love for you to keep in mind as we kind of continue probing this topic tonight with you guys. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'll be available later on to talk. But thank you for letting me go a little longer.
I think one of the things I've taken away from your talk there is about stigmatization.
Yes.
The idea that an individual feels uncomfortable about discussing their experience for risk of creating a negative view of themselves. Just explain to me, in terms of the people you spoke to, and that's many, many people, once you've spoken to them, what is that person's experience? What is that situation? Is it relief? Is it comfort? What's going on?
So, my partner's gonna love this. I spent many days of my life never admitting I had a UFO sighting. I lost many second dates after saying that I was a UFO researcher. I finally have someone who understands me and supports the work that I do. But it's different for every person, to be honest. But I will say, in the past 8 to 10 years now, now that this topic has gone more mainstream and it's more widely accepted, things have changed. People are willing to talk about these things. And just by the sheer example of how many people raised their hands here tonight, that's more than 10 years ago. Nobody would admit it. So I think the stigma and ridicule is shedding. And I think it's very important to show that everyday people are having these experiences. I don't know what it is, but it is changing people in many different ways. Whether that has to do with the UFO itself or not, I don't know. But I always come back to this topic is more about us than it is what the UFO is. And I do believe that if it is alien, if it is something non-human, it is a mirror looking back at us as human beings.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Very enlightening.
The Somewhere in the Skies podcast is free to listen to every week, but if you would like to help support the show, we have a very active Patreon page where you give what you think the show is worth. In return, you'll get early access to the main show, bonus episodes, and priority to ask our guests your listener questions. Your support truly makes the show continue and grow. So, to learn more and to join, visit patreon.com/somewhereskies.
Fourth and final, but not least, presenter to come forward, Steve Crabtree is a BBC colleague of mine. We worked together on a documentary series many years ago. Steve's career took off much better than mine. Did engineering, there you go. So, Steve is going to discuss with us the perception between science fiction and science fiction. Steve.
Cheers, Bill. Right, so why am I starting with a really random picture of that lovely cheeky lad there and a big picture of a house? Well, I'm Steve. I nearly wasn't Steve though. I was nearly Buzz, because I should have been born on the day we walked on the moon. And my mum always said she had nothing against the name Neil, but she would have called me Buzz. And about 10 years ago, it's a really bad picture, but Buzz Aldrin came into our office in the BBC. I was running a show called Horizon at the time, and I shook his hand and I told him the story. And I ran off and I took a picture of my hand. I literally touched someone who's walked on the moon. I rang my mum up and said, I just spoke to Buzz Aldrin and told him that I was nearly called Buzz. It's true, isn't it? And she said, yes, Steve, it's absolutely true. If you had been not 7 days late, you would be called Buzz. So it's right for me now to start with a clip. So I'm just going to show you some random clips, or not some random clips, of some of the shows I've worked on, some of the shows I've produced and made. This one isn't one that I worked on because it was made in 1969, but I want to put something into context for you, which is kind of like what my sort of theme of my talk is. So it's a short clip. It's from The Sky at Night, which I also used to run. I only stopped making The Sky at Night last year when I left the BBC. But just look at this clip, it's not very long, but I just think it's amazing.
Good evening. We've just had some amazing photographs sent back by the American probe to Mars, Mariner 6. You can see there some of the dark areas, which may be vegetation. Well, the question is, of course, are these dark areas due to organic matter, vegetation if you like, or are they not? Now, what about this all-important question of life on Mars? Do you think that these dark areas are due to anything organic? What do you think about it?
Primitive life there may be. I don't even think so. Intelligent life, certainly not.
So, in other words, you rather think that Mars is a dead planet?
Absolutely dead as a dodo.
Well, I suppose one of these things we're going to find out fairly soon.
I just find it astonishing that it was only 56 years ago that our technology wasn't good enough to determine whether that was a forest on Mars, right? It's like, I find that mind-blowing. That's within my lifetime. The technology has leapt so massively since then. I can't watch that clip endlessly over and over again, but I'm not going to play it again.
Okay, all right.
So the next clip is from an episode of The Sky at Night that I commissioned. So I used to run The Sky at Night as well, as I said. This is a little interview, just a little clip with a man called Doug Varcoach, and he runs an organisation called METI, which is the Messaging Extraterrestrial Intelligence. I got that right. I could have met Doug, in fact, but he's a really super interesting guy. His whole thing is that he thinks we shouldn't be waiting for aliens to signal us. We should be sending out signals to them, saying, we're here, come find us, everyone. And lots and lots of, he's quite a controversial figure, and lots and lots of people think it is a terrible idea, a really terrible idea to tell aliens that we are here. In fact, we do, I'll get onto that with a couple of other clips in a minute. But if you don't know Doug, he's really super interested. I've met him once or twice, and we did this entire Sky at Night with him, looking at his work, and this is just a little clip of it.
This is Professor Doug Varcoach. He's an astrobiologist, and he's trying to communicate with aliens.
I have no doubt that aliens have to exist somewhere out there. If there's no one else out there, it would be a miracle. And I don't believe in miracles.
Varcoach spent much of his career working at the SETI Institute, an acronym which stands for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. But in 2015, he decided to stop waiting for the aliens to come to us.
The SETI organizations that exist have avoided the controversy of sending messages into space. And yet, maybe that's what we need to do to make first contact. And so that's how METI International came to be.
He is now the president of METI International, which stands for Messaging Extraterrestrial Intelligence. They use a powerful transmitter to send a signal out into space in the hope that aliens will find it and respond.
The goal of METI is to establish first contact. We've always assumed the aliens will take the initiative. Maybe it's the audacious young civilization, like Earthlings, who have to reach out to make first contact.
He's really interesting, he's really super nice, but what's kind of fascinating is that lots of the people and the organisations who've got the technology to allow him to do that won't let him. So he's kind of travels around the world asking people, can I use your telescope to send a signal to this particular star system or that particular star system, and he has quite a hard time doing it, but he's really, really genuinely super interesting. He was in a film, that was a Sky Night, he was in another film, a series that I looked after. I lost the plays in the film Contact, so this is the lady who inspired that character in the Carl Sagan book and then film. And what she did in terms of alien communication is really interesting. So without giving it away, but she was really fundamental in setting up some of the processes that we may need to engage with should we actually meet an alien. So I'll let Jill speak for herself. It was a three-part series, and it kind of, if you are a fan of the books, or if you know the books, it kind of loosely followed each of the three novels. Everyone you've seen so far is in this presentation has been a scientist actively working in trying to discover alien life, in one way or the other. But I'm going to end with this clip, the last clip, which is with Saoirse Liu himself, who wrote The Three-Body Problem. And if you don't know his work, I highly recommend it, but let's just see what he's kind of like the biggest science fiction writer, I would argue, in the world right now. I think Netflix are doing another series of Three-Body Problem. Anyway, this is what he thinks we should be or should not be doing.
I'm sorry, I'm zooming this down because this clip is subtitled, and I'm noticing that we're losing the edge of the picture on the left and right.
He speaks in Chinese, so we subtitled him. I read this out because I've got terrible memory. I'm going to end with a quote from Arthur C. Clarke, again another science fiction writer, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. Two possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe, or we are not. Both possibilities are equally terrifying.
Okay, thank you very much. Because we're going to go to musical interlude now. I'd like to just ask a question. I can't pronounce it. Saoirse Liu.
That won't be correct, but that's as good as I've met him.
A question. He obviously, with his age, grew up in a China that was a very different China than it is today. A very closed China, a very restrictive China, and although some people would argue that politically it's probably no different, the reality is that the government controlled the narrative and the content. He takes a very, I would say, conservative view about our choice to attempt to contact the rest of the universe. Do you think that in part, having met him and having worked with him, that may come from an ideology of where he grew up? Or do you think he honestly, from a free-thinking writer, has explored that ideology and has said, look, at the end of the day, we've got to question whether we do this?
I think the latter, in truth, because he's unbelievably well-read. His Arthur C. Clarke is like #1 hero of all time, and he knows his science fiction really well. And a lot of his writings are all based on science papers. Like he's quite famous. Like a lot of the books are quite dense because he's very scientific. So I mean, there's lots of other Chinese fiction which takes a completely different approach. That's his unique.
Okay. So you've got a benchmark to measure him.
Yeah, so there's lots. I mean, I threw myself into Chinese science fiction for 3 years making that series and read a lot, and there's all sorts of viewpoints because it's in that sense, it's far more open than you might think.
Okay. I mean, the trilogy involves the first book, which has now been turned into a Netflix series. Mm-hmm. Do you understand if actually book 2 and book 3 intend to be turned into series as well?
I think they want to try and do them all, ultimately. But if you like the series, if you are a fan of the series, I honestly think you should read the books because they've changed a lot in the series. Not for the worse, but they're just quite different.
Just editorially to turn into drama.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you produced a 3-part series. What I'm really hoping that we can negotiate is that next year we should be able to show those, because that was a factual version of the book.
Yeah.
We need to talk a little bit more about that, I think, as we go forward. But the general premise of conservatism, do you think that is something, having met the METI guy, is something that is generally across science? Where do you think the balance is? Do you think people are more like, no, we should try and contact them or not? What's your perception?
Gosh, it's a really good question. I don't know. I think one of the themes I was really trying to make in my presentation was that we often hear in the sort of UFO community, if you want to put it like that, but we often hear of cover-ups and conspiracies, and are people, what do the governments really know? And I guess what I wanted to show is that there are actually literally thousands of scientists spending millions of pounds looking for aliens. It's not like they're not covering it, like it's there, so they're actively doing it. And the thing with Doug compared to say Jill is, should we be sending signals, should we not? I mean, I think he's quite controversial. I mean, I think most scientists would say that's a bad idea. We want to listen. We don't yet want to say. I mean, what's the saying about every so far on Earth, every advanced civilization that's found, less advanced civilizations just decimated it. So
Okay, just one last question on this, and I'm hoping that everybody's been storing up their questions, because after the music we're going to go to a short break, opportunity to take a comfort break, use the bar, and we'll come back in. I'll time it. If we can give it sort of 20 minutes, and then 15 minutes. If you can be back here for the plenary session with all of our presenters. Prior to the questions, we have actually already a list of questions we want to ask, so we're going to explore this subject a little bit further. But just finally, on that premise about the scientific community thinking it's a bad idea, is that because science says don't waste your energy, we need to listen, or is it fear?
I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, I think again, it's like in the Rendezvous with the Future, which is what that series was called. We had a scientist who is in the program, whose job it is to look at all the high definition photographs that we've now got of the moon to try to find alien artifacts on it. That's his job, right? He gets up, pops on at university and looks at pictures to try and find alien artifacts. And I'm like, that's the job I want to do. I don't want to I want to look for aliens on the moon. So honestly, Bill, I don't know. That's the truth. But I do know that lots and lots of scientists are looking for aliens.
All right. Thank you, Steve, again. That was absolutely fantastic. Start with you. You've seen 3 other presentations this evening.
Yeah.
What's your feedback?
No, it was great. It was really, I was saying to Steve, that clip of Patrick Moore was incredible. Just to acknowledge for just a few moments that time period. It was only 56 years ago that we thought that Mars had life on it still, potentially. And I just think that's astonishing that you have people in the room who were alive when we still thought that life was on Mars. And it still could well be. I don't think we can rule that out. And incredible to hear about the stories as well of all of the different people who've had encounters. And I think it's great to see that there is a community that will acknowledge the people who've had these experiences and support them with it, because so many will dismiss these kind of things, and that's just really good to see that.
I also learned that, there are real, like, the people being touched in a way. So I read, as in listened to Ryan's book in the car on the way up from London yesterday, in one go, so I got it kind of more or less. And it was amazing, and it's really, I also say it's very beautifully written. But what is interesting are the people who have had these experiences. I've been into the unexplained and all of that sort of thing my entire life, and I've never actually met anyone who has had that sort of experience. So it was kind of really interesting to go, and here's another, and here's another, and here's another, and here's 3, and here's 17 who all saw it at the same time. So
I do live, breathe, and sleep UFOs. It is my day job, and I feel very fortunate that this thing that fell into my lap when I was 12 years old has become such a passion for so many out there right now. Like we said, UFOs are kind of more accepted now more than ever. But I do go to conferences where I talk to experiencers and witnesses. So I live in that world all the time. But to have you guys give your talks, and Beatrice as well, it only strengthens what I do, which I think is really cool. You know, you started with how vast the universe is. You spoke about, the possibilities of if we should make contact, what are the possibilities of making contact. Beatrice is talking about these papers that she just pre-published, that are going to be going under peer review about what she thinks about have we possibly been visited. And some evidence that she has found could lean that way. So it only strengthens these stories that have come to me. They are just stories. I have no proof or evidence to support all these stories, but there are people in this room who are in my books, and I thank them for being here tonight. That means the world to me, that they would come support my work, and I hope I could give them a platform to just share their stories. So again, everything you gentlemen talked about and Beatrice talked about only keeps me going.
So in 1970, when I was just a teenager, I saw some lights in the sky that were moving across the skyline. And my older brother, who was a scientist and electrical engineer and all sorts of strange things I didn't understand, said to me, "Oh, that was Skylab." Remember Skylab? Yeah. Before the International Space Station. But what I didn't say to my brother was that this thing arcing across the sky then went whoop and disappeared off into distance, and that was not Skylab. Nobody ever explained to me what that was. Can you?
No. Reminding us, your pips, Steve, how past technology has been.
It's going to be amazing for any younger people in the audience to think what in 50 years how it's going to change massively. And I mean absolutely massively. I'm going to have a crack at that.
Oh.
Do you know what panspermia is? Panspermia is a theory that all life on Earth came from elsewhere in the universe, and that it was brought to us by comets, probably, with water on them, likely. And so actually we are the aliens, is the theory. So,
that explains everything.
But there is people studying this. Well, how did life on Earth begin? Because no one actually knows how life on Earth began. So that is one theory, is that it was brought to us from outer space, which kind of is logical if you think about it.
Right, I've got the next question, so I think we're just going to actually pass it along after me. I think there are so many questions. I actually agree with that. I think that's the most likely way that we are this unique thing that we are. Anyway, that's not my question. So if you look at the statistics back in time, until about the 1940s and 1950s, people used to report goblins, brags, bogles, fairies, all kinds of things. And before that, there were gods and monsters, therianthropes. Before that, when shaman, religious ceremonies drove how people were, people used to, have out-of-body experiences. And then there's near-death experiences and shared death experiences. And then we've got the technology post the Second World War, and we've got suddenly the sighting of aliens. Is it contextually construed? Is that how it works? Is it all the same thing? And I think you make the point that maybe it is all the same thing. Maybe it's all the same experience, the thinning of the veil, whatever it is. What do you think about that, all of you?
So I've had the opportunity several times now to interview Jacques Vallée, who is a computer scientist, mythologist.
Astronomer. He started off as an astronomer.
Yeah. I think if you look at a close encounter experience, you do have to contextualize it with a certain culture, with a certain time period, because it can influence the interpretation of what that was. There are many people who, I've spoken to people who believe that their quote-unquote alien abduction experience was demonic. So right there, you're already kind of connecting into your beliefs, your spiritualism. And I'm not going to take that away from them and tell them, no, that wasn't a demon, it was a gray alien, or vice versa. So I do think it's fascinating that different cultures throughout time have a different way. I mean, if you even look at the cover of this book, it's literally like a gray alien holding the mask of a fairy.
This is Jacques Vallée.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then also the mask of a demon.
It's a classic.
It's fascinating. So yeah, I think interpretation has a lot to do with it, and I do think, whether it's the folklore of yesterday, they can connect it to the alien of the present or future.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. Ontological shock.
Nice small topic. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, what's ontological shock?
So an ontological shock is when your place in the world, how you see yourself, your upbringing, everything you've been taught. It's a psychological term. It changes. Has your mind changed? Because there's a new year in September with whistleblowers first hand, maybe relating to crash retrieval programs. So this is happening. Just Marco Rubio, the current what's he called, the foreign secretary of the United States, he has heard a lot of this testimony as well. The question is, how is your mind as it started to open?
Just a point on Alan Robson, he now makes a living from ghost hunting. So I reckon his mind might have changed, for sure. And I was just saying this actually to Ryan, I think that the scientific community as a whole now is a lot more receptive than we possibly think to the idea that there could be either house-being visitors, there could be life elsewhere in the universe, and more money than ever before is probably being spent, as Steve rightly said as well, on trying to find the existence of life. So I'd say that the stigma will always be there in some respects with some people, but who cares about the stigma is what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, in my book I coined the term, it's a phantom war. People think that the scientists are against the ufologists or the believers, when in reality, like, everything I do, which is witness testimony, stories like yours, stories like Terry's, it only is strengthened by the possibilities of what is possible in the universe. So yeah, I think, as ontological shock is a good way to look at it. I think a lot of people are just scared of change, of this being real, because then, like, Bruno, who was burned at the stake for what he said, there is still
a reluctance to believe in something other than ourselves. And once we finally accept that, or are forced to accept that, I think that's the day when ufologists and scientists can finally, cheers the beer together and be like, we were all right.
Yeah. I think it takes a creative mind.
Yeah.
Any science is really creativity, like rightly you say, Giordano Bruno. It starts with this incredibly outlandish idea that can lead you down the garden path to something phenomenal.
I think to answer absolutely directly for me, and the sort of job I do and what I do, I'm not a scientist, so, not a kind of investigative journalist. I'm a TV. I just make TV programs, right? That's it. So for me, it's the evidence. So I just need the big shiny UFO on the lawn of the White House with CNN literally filming the aliens walking out. And then I'll believe.
Right? Above the White House. That's pretty close.
But then I'll believe, because up until you've got that, you don't really have anything. You've got lots of unbelievable stuff. I mean, amazingly unbelievable stories. And you've got lots of theories, and we've all, I will put it out there, like I said, I think it would be insanely weird if the universe is not full of life. Whether it's actually come here in a spaceship, I have to see the spaceship, because until I've done that, I'm not going to believe it.
Much for 4 fascinating presentations this evening, which I found really interesting. This question may sound a little bit sceptical, but it's not meant to be at all. I think what you've proved tonight, beyond any doubt at all, is that UFOs certainly exist. And I think everybody in this theatre will accept that there are things we've seen in the sky that we just can't explain. We don't know what they are or where they come from. So on that case, absolutely proved, I would say. I think I'm probably speaking on behalf of everybody in here tonight. But that's a long stretch, isn't it, from saying, well, we've got UFOs, don't know what they are. What about alien life and ETs? And the point could be made that we've been trying really hard since, I think, 1955 at least, when we saw the lovely Patrick Morgan, who's broadcast about life on Mars, probably for a lot longer than that. And we've had dozens and dozens of really, really clever people spending a lot of money, a lot of resource, and these days, really clever resources, really sophisticated equipment. So, lots of eggheads working really hard to prove that ETs exist and alien life exists. A skeptic would say, well, where's the proof? And what can you say to encourage us to keep on looking and not say, well, because we've got nothing so far, we'll believe what the skeptics say, which is, well, no evidence, doesn't exist. And I don't believe that, and I don't think any of you 4 do, and I don't think anybody in here does. But how can you encourage us to keep going in the light of the fact that there would seem to be little evidence, little hard evidence at the moment? So I'm looking for encouragement here. I say it sounds a skeptical question, but I'm looking for encouragement.
Well, can I just ask a clarification? There's loads of evidence. So it's like, when you say hard evidence, what do you mean by hard? What's hard?
Well, something that's beyond question. If you look at the guy who was at the drive-in, you could pick holes all the way through that. I'm looking for something that you can put in front of people and they say, well, yeah, thank you. That proves to us that there are ETs, there is alien life.
There's a difference between, evidence and proof. And you said basically science never proves anything. Science continues to move forward, and often through questioning, and often where a paradigm break happens is when there's enough anomalies in your data and how things are working that you have to change your whole frame of reference and the way you go forward. Sort of saying, well, what do you mean by evidence? What are you looking for? This vast numbers of credible witness testimony about what people have witnessed, experienced. It's category error to apply this methodology, the particular scientific methodology, to this category of evidence. Anyway.
Yeah, okay, I've got something that I just want to come back on that, if that's all right. I think just with response to your question of why should we still look and stuff, I think one of the things that people often gravitate to is that this is a new thing that we've just decided that we're looking now for UFOs, and it's a relatively new belief. But you can trace this right back to the Babylonians, and then you start to look at things like deities in the sky. These were very similar beliefs. They believed that something lived beyond our atmosphere, and ultimately when we're talking about life elsewhere in the universe, we're talking about things that live beyond our atmosphere. And evidence is a really difficult thing to come across and to really, like you said, find something that you can't pick holes in. Religion is probably one of the biggest examples of that. We've had religions that have lasted thousands of years without any credible evidence, arguably, in some cases. But one of the big things that I think comes from any kind of research like this is the byproduct that we get for technology. For example, did we go to the moon? Whether you believe it or not, we have two-way radios, we have pacemakers, we have new technology that comes as a result of all of these scientific feats that we go to try and answer these questions. So I think that's my response.
I just want to add very briefly to that, because I couldn't agree more, but like, don't be afraid of investing in technology. So Hubble, amazing. Took another 30, 40 years before James Webb, that's up there now. That's powerful enough to see an exoplanet, as in, with data. Another 30, 40 years, we should have another telescope up there that's maybe optical, so you might be able to photograph, actually see an exoplanet in real life. And so I think, going back to the belief that I've got, which is that there are alien worlds and aliens out there, but we're only going to do it with technology. We're only going to find it by looking for it, I believe, personally. And I think that's why you should sort of keep the belief going, because it's just like do you know how many moons? Correct me here, please. How many moons does Jupiter have? Lots, right? No one knows, because we haven't even got the technology to count them, right? We know there's like 70 odd-ish. And then you keep going, if you look at it, well, we saw it once in 1972, we've never seen it again, so we don't know if it's a moon or not. And I'm like, it's only, like, you can see Jupiter, like, on a clear night, and we don't even know how many bloody moons it's got. Like, that's how you'll find life out there, by just kind of using the tech, I reckon.
I'm glad you brought up James Webb. I mean, since the dawn of time, we've never recorded an interstellar object in our solar system. And in the past year, we've captured 3. So for me, it's only a matter of time before one of those interstellar objects, a lot of them will be asteroids, comets, things like that. But 20 years, 30 years, what if one of them's a spaceship?
So we come back here in 20 years' time, and I ask the same question, and you say, funny you should answer that. Here's the evidence, and up comes the screen. Well, let's hope that's right. And we go. Thank you. One more question.
Yeah, I've never seen a UFO, or would love to. I've always believed in it. So my question is to you, Ryan. Where in the UK am I most likely to see one, and where in the world am I most likely to see one?
Nicole was bringing up, I actually, and I don't know why I didn't put this in my presentation, I've got like a handful of cases that happened near Hexham, Newcastle, but you want a really weird place? Bonnie Bridge. Stop it. There's everything you can imagine going on there. Ghosts, phantom dogs, UFOs, Bigfoots, it's crazy. So,
Bigfoot in Scotland?
Yeah. Visit Scottish Bigfoot.
You want to tell people about Hessdalen?
Oh yes, Hessdalen.
Hessdalen, like guaranteed Hessdalen.
Yeah. They have
Hessdalen?
Hessdalen, right?
Hessdalen. Yeah, it's in Sweden.
Yep. They have a very strange aerial phenomena that occurs constantly. This isn't just a fluke. This strange light phenomenon, which could have explanation someday, does not right now. And it's a very fascinating place.
Yes, I've had scientists and people there 24 hours, but it's been going on for like how long? Decade?
Yeah, and they've built monitoring systems to record it. So again, that's what gives me hope. Like you mentioned, they're always ahead of our technology. So if whatever technology is being displayed by a quote unquote UFO, I think it gives us hope for our own future and our own ambitions to continue exploring the cosmos and see if there are aliens out there. But a lot of people do believe they have come here. And I'm going to tell their stories, and hopefully one day there will be a convergence between the witness testimony and the science.
So when I see one, I know who to get in touch with.
Exactly. Please reach out to me.
Lots of people put their hands up when Ryan asked the question, how many of you, what was the question exactly you asked, Ryan?
How many people have seen something in the sky they cannot explain?
So I was quite intrigued by the fact, or we were intrigued by the fact that maybe many of you put your hands up were from Hexham. We want to do this festival again next year, and it would be really great if you can come to us either through our website, cosmicfrequencies.org, and message us, and we'd like to maybe get a few of you together, and if you're willing to tell your stories and weave that into next year's festival and have a really local perspective. And you can see that we're quite a creative bunch, so we do it in a respectful and interesting way, but definitely give you a platform to tell your stories and have a very local perspective on people's experiences. So contact us if you raised your hand and you're local. And we'd like to have some of your stories told if you're willing.
We are going to have a play-out song by SKX Funkanauts. Can I just ask you to put your hands together for our excellent panel?
Somewhere in the Skies is part of the Somewhere podcast universe. Please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. To learn more about all of our shows, visit thespu.com.
Spectre Vision Radio.